issues. Sean, if you just, identify yourself, where you live, and would be delighted to hear your opinion.
Sure. Sean Curran from Sudbury, Massachusetts. I want to thank the commission for inviting me to offer a perspective on money and politics. I have been either directly involved with electoral politics in official capacities or indirectly as a fundraiser for 26 years. I've served as chairman of a campaign committee for a sitting governor and as chair of a federal political action committee. I've raised money for and contributed money to many Democratic candidates for office, be they candidates for city council, statewide offices, or federal offices. Today, I'd like to talk with the commission about how our current system does not result in the kind of government people deserve. If we were to present an idealized vision for an elected official in our democracy, perhaps the person would have the following characteristics. He or she would be dedicated steadfastly to the truth, committed to research and data to support public decisions, having the capability and judgment to balance the needs of industry and the larger public with an eye always toward what is ultimately better for society, and that person would be accessible to the people he or she represents. Because money has such a dominant role in our politics, the idealized vision I described is far too rare. The truth is substituted for by loud assertion. Data is subjective. The powerful and connected trump the ordinary citizen, and an elected official must spend time with donors, live and on the phone, for more time than they can spend with the people they represent. I see all of these things as the little corruptions of our system. When combined, they result in the subversion of representative democracy, and it puts a dangerous distance between the governed and those they elect. We need to fix it. Of all the issues we confront as a society, be it climate change, issues of foreign policy, or healthcare, money has an outsized role in the way these issues are debated and unfortunately settled. All of what I have discussed here so far relates to candidate campaign committees. One bright spot, obviously, with candidate committees is that there are legal limits on how much an individual can give, and public disclosure of donors and expenditures is present in some form or fashion in most states. These laws are intended to limit the influence of money on the decisions made by candidates and elected leaders, and to enable the public to draw conclusions about who might be influencing them. Then came Citizens United. The Citizens United ruling is not something I am qualified to discuss from a constitutional law perspective, but I can speak to how it is impacting our politics and the fundraising that supports both candidates for public office and issue campaigns. There are many ways to form an independent expenditure committee, or an IE. In short, most IEs are set up with a nonprofit tax classification and are required to hew to the letter of the law about the types of activities they engage in, the amount of time they engage in those activities, and whether they need to disclose their donors and donations. The most prevalent of the IEs and what the Citizens United ruling gave rise to is the 527 Super PAC. Classified in the tax code under Section 527 as a nonprofit, these PACs and Super PACs can raise money for direct political activities. Traditional PACs have been with us for decades, and the FEC requires reporting of their donors and limits, giving to $5,000 per year. Super PACs are not constrained by donation limits, as most of you know, or the sources of for their donations. Exploitation of the various tax classifications is not limited to Section 527, however. Even 501c3s, which the public thinks of as a classification for charities, have gotten into politics by exploiting a loophole that allows for voter education and get-out-the-vote drives. A 501c3 nonprofit cannot, by law, spend more than roughly 25% of its money or time on direct advocacy for an issue. This type of IE is typically set up to provide public education. 501c3s are not always required to disclose the source of their donation to the public, and many do not. 501c4s allow for 50% of the activities to be in the realm of advocacy. These rules on their face seem reasonable and straightforward. However, through the years, I have seen campaign finance laws written, passed, and exploited because of discovered or designed loopholes. Allow me to provide a hypothetical example of how 501c4 can violate the spirit of the law and influence an election. Imagine a powerful House chairman from a congressional committee that oversees drug pricing. He has always been a strong industry advocate and favors market-only approaches to controlling drug costs. The industry loves the chairman. They love the chairman so much that when he is up for re-election, its trade association develops a 501c4 called Healthcare for Americans and sets it up to provide the public with information about the positions and voting record of members and candidates for Congress. They begin by hiring researchers and lay out a series of reports about the various candidates challenging the favored chairman. The reports are not advocating a vote in the coming election for the chairman because they are only meant to enlighten the public as to what the citizens behind Healthcare for Americans think about the positions taken. Meanwhile, all of the companies that make up the membership of the industry association are assessed how much they will contribute to Healthcare for Americans. Some, depending on size, are assessed as much as $1 million apiece. Healthcare for Americans coffers swell to $40 million. For good measure, a couple of the CEOs from the bigger players in the industry throw $1 million each in, bringing the total to $50 million. Based on the conservative 75 to 25% rule of education activities to direct advocacy, this could mean that Healthcare for Americans has $12.5 million to spend on direct mail, field operations, and television ads that further educate the public on the voting records and plans of the two candidates. This number is twice the amount that ordinary members of Congress raise and spend. From the summer into the fall, the public would be bombarded with television ads from Healthcare for Americans that carefully walks the line between outright praise for the chairman and simple voter education. If any curious citizen were to inquire as to who is really behind Americans for Health Care, that person would be told good people just like you that prefer to remain anonymous. I want the commission to know that this type of exploitation is happening right now. The collection of unlimited amounts of money from unnamed sources to influence our elections or a public decision is happening right now. I hope that in your discussions, you can get into ways to curb this and other activities that undermine our democracy. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Sean. Will we have a copy of your comments?
Sure.
Questions, comments from the commission?
Thank you very much for your thoughtful testimony. I'm curious, in your experience in this field, if you have no...
I'm fine.
Yeah, we can do a quick round of questions, maybe just a few minutes. I'm curious, in your experience, if you have found that, well, let's call them individuals or small donors, and by small I even mean the maxed out regulated donors, direct donors to contribution. If you believe that they are receiving less attention from candidates and elected officials in the aftermath of Citizens United than they would receive before?
No, I don't think less attention. If you take the kind of week that a member of Congress has, that member of Congress is spending 40% of their time dialing for dollars with donors. And so I think donors are cultivated. Those donors that are in the realm of the max out donor, especially by the federal standards, which is $5,800 per election cycle between primary and general election. Those types of donors are maintained in a way that they've all become kind of accustomed to. They're invited to retreats with the member. They are invited to, special events with the member. They get a birthday call from the member. Those are the types of things, frankly, that are, as I said in my testimony, are those mini corruptions, because everybody that is elected that particular member of Congress should have an expectation that they're being studious about public policy, talking to their constituents, and going and representing them directly. When they're on the phone offering birthday wishes to $5,800 per cycle donors, that is taking away from the work that they should be doing. And I don't even think that the candidates themselves, the members, the ones that are dedicated, want to do this, but they have no choice. That's basically the dominant paradigm, is that they have no choice.
Can I ask a follow-up on that, which is related? So we're referring now to, you talked about the ways you can get unlimited money if you had unlimited money to spend, whether it's a super PAC, right, the 501c3 or 4 method. But if I were a donor and I had done all that, and I said, well, don't worry about that, we'll take care of the super PAC, but I feel constrained that I can only give you, member, $5,800. I want to help control Congress so I can get my agenda through. but I only want to write one check. Keep it simple.
Right.
Even where there's supposedly limits, how much could I give with just one check to have influence with a party, with the Congress, with the office holder?
Yep.
Are there ways that that happens?
Yeah, so special funds are set up through the party apparatus. You'll see it happen during a presidential election where you can write a check for $250,000, one single check for $250,000. It goes to a member. That member then gives it to the party, and the party has a distribution chain where that money goes to. So a single check is written, but the financial distribution goes to state party operations, other parts of the national party operations, field operations, what have you. So they do create these kind of opportunities, I'll call them, for single donors to write a very, very large check, and it typically happens during presidential years.
So even if the limit is $2,800 for a single donor, if I were to call, say, a prominent committee chair, or even the top, Senate President, Senate Majority Leader, or on the other side, House Speaker, and I was one of those who'd written a $250,000 check, would I have any trouble getting a meeting with the top, right up to the top, to the Senate Majority Leader or the House Speaker?
Well, I think the answer to that is no, you would not have any problem probably getting that meeting. If you were doing that number, you are likely having 6 or 7 opportunities to meet with the House Speaker over the course of the year. There'd be a retreat. They do a retreat to Greenbrier in
That's a resort in West Virginia?
Yes, a resort in West Virginia where they invite major donors, folks that have kind of hit that top level. And so you're going to have plenty of opportunities, some of which will be just in a standard social setting, and others, if you wanted them, in an official setting in the Congress.
Is there anything you could say about the extent or degree to which candidates and elected officials work behind the scenes to cultivate these unlimited or large-scale donations funneled through IEs rather than, say, focusing on the regulated, restricted, smaller amounts directly to their campaigns?
Yeah, I think in the course, especially of a presidential year, or in a year where we're in a off-cycle election, perfect example is 2018. Members are asked by the party, or in the case of House members, the DCCC or the RCCC, to help support the Speaker's effort with the Democratic side, or the minority leader's effort on the Republican side, to get money out to, districts where there's a difficult election. Mm-hmm. And so the Speaker will travel all over the country, and regional finance staff will set up events. And in those events, those larger checks are transacted, basically. And the member that is hosting that event with, whether it's Speaker Pelosi or the minority leader on the Republican side, those members get credit for bringing in those checks.
Any other questions from the members of the commission, or those on the phone?
I was one question. You just said something about credit. So what does that entail?
Well, I think in the seniority system in the Congress, I think when you are working on behalf of leadership so that you strengthen leadership's position with the members by helping to support the election or re-election of members that are in the leadership or close to the leadership, it helps your career.
Can I try to just bring it back to the mini corruption and the distance between the governed and the governed that you referred to so interestingly? And we had a member of the public at our last public workshop in Salem who had a lot of information and expertise around impacts on lakes and water of chemicals and environmental issues. And she used the phrase, I feel like I have tape over my mouth. I have no one to tell about this information. No one listens. I can't get a meeting. And it's obviously she's not going to be at the Greenbrier with the Senate President and the Senate Majority Leader and the House Speaker. Is that a free speech issue? I mean, apart from the constitutional law aspects of the First Amendment, when people talk about unlimited money being free speech, how do you feel about that in terms of people saying they have tape over their mouth? Maybe they should just call you and get one of those one of those meetings set up and drop their $250,000 check. But obviously most people,
don't have it.
most Americans can't do that, right?
Right. Well, I won't say it's the good news, because frankly, it's not good news at all, but that person's perspective is represented by other major donors too. You know, I remember in Massachusetts a couple of years ago, there was an independent expenditure set up by the chairman of the Sierra Club here. So he was the local regional chair of the Sierra Club. He happened to be a very wealthy individual, and he decided to put his own radio ads up in the middle of a gubernatorial election to kind of force the issue about the environment being an important part. So it's not just the polluter side. Both sides actually can have outsized impact on the politics of the day. It's a question of money. And I don't like the fact that our system tends to cater to the well-connected, cater to the wealthy, and cater to big corporate interests, or interests that happen to be well-moneyed, whether they're left or right. I would love the ideal to be true, which is you elect people to public office who want to strike a balance between all the things that are in the realm of public policy and come out with what's best for society. So I don't like that that person feels that way. I understand why she does or he does.
Would you support limits on spending, whether it's contributions, independent spending, whatever the source, unions, corporations, individuals?
So I would support a total elimination of any political activity with any 501c3 or C4, 100% across the board. The loopholes that are there are giving way to all sorts of treachery in my book. 527 super PACs have done such damage to our democracy that I would like to see it overturned, obviously, and I'd like an amendment to do that, and that's why I'm here to support it. But in terms of candidates, my preference would be for a threshold system very similar to what Connecticut does with state legislators, which is once you have shown you can get enough small dollar donations that you're a viable candidate, then the state will step up with some money and publicly fund you at some level in those campaigns. And you know, $100 is within the realm of what people can manage. At least it touches different demographics than what the current system seems to touch.
The commission obviously finds this very, very interesting, but in the interest of time, I think we should move on. Is there any final questions? Thank you again, Sean. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.